We've got Rangers, we've got Devils, we got a very special crossover edition of Locked On New York Rangers and Locked On New Jersey Devils today. Looking forward to breaking down this matchup with Trey Matthews of Locked On Devils.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back, Ranger fans and Devil fans, general hockey fans as well. Got a very special crossover edition. Like I just mentioned today, this is John Chick with Locked On New York Rangers, joined by my good friend Trey Matthews of Locked On New Jersey Devils. And of course, we want to just let everybody know right off the top here that today's episode, special crossover episode, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. And Trey, obviously heavyweight matchup here, two teams that met in the playoffs last year, and the less said about that, the better from my end, but I'm sure you enjoyed it. But regardless, this rivalry is right back in full swing. It's kind of back to, being what it was back in the 90s and even the early 2000s. It picked up again, and just two very talented teams, but two teams that are both dealing with some injuries right now. Adam Fox, Igor Shesterkin, Filip Chytil, to name a few for the Rangers, and of course for you guys, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier. What can you tell us about the injury issues that the Devils are dealing with, and are any of these guys expected to potentially play in this game and come back against the Rangers here?
So a few hours before we started recording, Jack Hughes actually did return to the Devils' practice, and Lindy Ruff revealed that Jack Hughes will be a game-time decision. Now, my educated guess is that I am assuming that Jack Hughes will suit up in the game against the Rangers, because I think that's what he had his eyes set towards, because he was actually theoretically, if he wanted to, I think he could have played in the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, which was the previous matchup for the Devils, because there were reports saying that he could join the team on the road in Pittsburgh and maybe he would make his triumphant return. But I think he really wanted to return against the Rangers. And Lindy Ruff also said he was making great progress each and every day. And obviously with Jack Hughes being the star player and in the midst of possibly trying to get his name into the Hart Trophy race, usually it's better to be safe than sorry. So I think Jack Hughes will suit up in the game against the Rangers. He has a knack for the dramatics. He loves the bright lights. And I think he wants that storybook, I guess, not storybook ending, but I guess a storybook beginner, which is he comes back from injury and I think he wants to dominate the New York Rangers or at least score a goal here and there. But as for Nico Hischier, he's still not practicing. He's going to be out for a few more games. He's been out for the last few weeks due to an upper body injury. He took a dirty cross check. He took a dirty cross check to the head against the Buffalo Sabres a couple weeks back. And Lindy Ruff initially said it was a day-to-day process, but unfortunately, he is now on the IR, and we're just waiting to see when is he going to make his highly anticipated return. And then for Timo Meier, this was actually developing shortly before the Pittsburgh Penguins game, in which Meier actually got dinged up in the matchup before the Penguins against the Jets, and he's dealing with a lower body injury. Lindy Ruff says it's going to be a short-term process, but Meier did not return to practice, so I'm not anticipating for him to play against the Rangers. So once again, even though the Devils will get Jack Hughes back, they are still going to be somewhat shorthanded. But I want to ask you about Igor Shesterkin, because it was revealed that Peter Laviolette said he wasn't going to reveal the starting goalie, but I think he was hinting at the fact that maybe Shesterkin will return against the Devils. So I guess it's an eye for an eye for both the Rangers and the Devils, because you get Shesterkin, who even though Jonathan Quick has been holding down the net quite nicely for you guys, Shesterkin is obviously the MVP caliber player on the Rangers roster. He's a hell of a goalie, and I got to give him props in that regards. And then for Jack Hughes, obviously he's our Hart caliber player. He's our MVP. He's our superstar. So I think it's going to be the story of the superstars returning for both the Rangers and the Devils. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, anytime you get a situation like this and you've got two teams both dealing with injuries, my preference is always, I mean, you never want to see anybody get hurt, whether it's your team or one of your opponents, but I always like seeing teams at full strength. And then that way, there's no excuses. Nobody can say, well, we were missing this guy, we were missing that guy. But to your point, Trey, I do think Igor is going to be back for this one. The Rangers, due to basically just been described as a quirk in the schedule, they didn't play at all Monday through Friday. Their last game was on Sunday. So they've had quite the layoff here. which on one hand is rough because they've been playing really well and you don't want to go cold, when you're on a hot streak. But by that same token, they have had some injuries. And Igor, it wasn't just Laviolette, Igor, in addition to that, he was playing it kind of coy. He kind of smiled and said, we'll see, when, being asked if he was going to be back in the net. So all signs seem to be pointing toward Igor being back out there. I mean, nothing is really set in stone. And, if they do know for sure that he's coming back, maybe there's some gamesmanship there about just not, revealing the starting goalie. That could be going on as well. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Jonathan Quick's done a heck of a job. It seems like, he's kind of settled into being a backup, which is interesting because, I mean, that guy hasn't been a backup in his entire life and he has to do it now. And, not only giving the Rangers a chance, but there's been games he's played where he's one of the main reasons why they end up with 2 points. So he's done a great job. But obviously, if you're a Ranger fan, you really look forward to seeing Igor back, especially for, a division matchup against the Devils here.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Quick has actually surprised me because I will give him his props. He is a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, and he's been in this league for a long time. Who he got his first Stanley Cup against is very irrelevant, and who he got his second Stanley Cup against, I guess that's also irrelevant, but still, it's just like he's been in the league for a good while, but I would say he's on the other side of his better days, but I use this as an example when the Devils were slumping, when they were on their 3-game losing streak. I said, look, I understand that you're missing some star power in Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, but it still doesn't excuse some of the mistakes that they were making, the defensive lapses. And I was just like, look at what the New York Rangers have been able to do, which is they lost Igor Shesterkin for a few games, but yet they still sit atop of the Metropolitan Division because you have someone like Jonathan Quick holding down the fort. Yes, Jonathan Quick, who's been in the league forever, has won Stanley Cups, has made a decent name for himself in the NHL. But let's face it, he's not the player that he once was. I think that's safe to say. But somehow, some way, he is sort of rekindled of what he's been able to do for a good while.
Yeah, for sure. And, to kind of build off of what you were saying and just talk about the injuries here, Devils, big win, I thought, for them on Thursday against the Penguins, coming away with the 5-2 victory, snapped a 3-game losing streak. How big do you think that was as far as like a confidence booster and just those players kind of, maybe realizing that, okay, we're missing some guys, but we can still play Devils hockey and we can still win some games. How do you feel about that one?
Oh, it was big for a lot of reasons. For one, the Penguins were one of the hottest teams in the NHL. It seems like they've kind of gotten their act together going into that matchup. They were on a 5-game win streak. You had players like Sidney Crosby, Jake Gensel, Tristan Jarry step up in big ways during that 5-game stretch. Erik Karlsson as well. So the Devils definitely had their work cut out for them. They had their backs against the wall. And obviously, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier were already out, but then we got the developing news that Timo Meier was a little dinged up and he was going to be a game-time decision. So Lindy Ruff had to take a bit of a risk. He did 11-7 lineup combination, which included Colin Miller making his season debut for New Jersey. And then you sit Chris Tierney, you put in Max Willman, which I think was a smart move by Lindy Ruff. And the Devils dominated the Penguins, I think it's safe to say. They came out victorious by a score of 5-2. And I talked about it on my show. It wasn't like the Devils just squeaked away with a victory. They dominated, especially in period 3. They recaptured the momentum because Brian Rust scored 2 goals for the Penguins. But anytime Rust scored, the Devils had an answer. And it was a coming out party of a sense for a lot of players. So you had someone like Curtis Lazar. He got his first shorthanded goal since like 2016. You had Nathan Bastian, who had been struggling on the rink for the Devils for quite some time this season. So he needed some sort of a momentum shift. Then you get players like Luke Hughes and Colin Miller. They were like peanut butter and jelly. They were a great defensive pairing. And that might also be an X factor for the Devils. I'm not really sure what Lindy Ruff is thinking, though, because at one of the more recent practices, I saw that Colin Miller was being used as an extra defenseman and Brendan Smith was still being paired alongside Luke Hughes. So I really hope that's just for practice and we'll see what happens in a game. Obviously, a lot of things are projected to shift a little bit, but yeah, that win against the Penguins was just big in more ways than one because the Devils really stepped up in terms of depth without their star players, and they put their foot on the gas pedal and they maintained the momentum. And I think that was huge for them. But I don't want to just talk about the Devils. I want to hear more about the Rangers because while we're talking about hottest teams in the NHL, the Rangers are right in that discussion because in their previous 10 games, they have a record of 9-0-1. And when I was talking to Johnny Lazarus a few months back, he he was saying like, you guys basically signed a bunch of beer league players because you signed a lot of older players. You got rid of Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane, but in comes Nick Bonito, in comes Blake Wheeler, in comes Jonathan Quick. So you guys were kind of in a salary crunch, and you can only go after what you afforded. But it seems like it's working for the Rangers.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, you go into this offseason here and you don't have a whole lot of cap space if you're the Rangers. So going into it, even when I was previewing free agency, I wasn't looking at the top guys because it just wasn't going to happen. They don't have the money for it. But as far as, making it work and kind of going bargain hunting as Chris Drury had to do this offseason, it feels like it's worked out really well. Blake Wheeler off to a slow start for sure. It took him a long time to get his first point. Starting to show signs of life recently, though, even though he's another guy on clearly the back nine of his career. Nick Bonino's been great.
He's like what? He's like what? 37.
He's 30, 37. Yeah,
with the Jets. And Bonito, yes, a two-time Stanley Cup champion, won back-to-back with the Penguins. Ironically, because we were talking about the Penguins, but it's just like, they're kind of on the other side of their better days.
Yeah, a little bit, but I think with somebody like Nick Bonino, he's one of those players that's a veteran, and he just kind of knows the things that he's got to do to help his team win. He's a beast on the faceoff circle. He's a heck of a penalty killer, and I mean, the amount of block shots that this guy was racking up, I haven't looked at it the last couple of games, but my God, I mean, he's gonna be over 200 block shots in the season if he stays at the pace that he's at. So he's done a heck of a job, and we already talked about Quick, and he's done a nice job when he's had to fill in there as well. So. And Erik Gustafsson, somebody that kind of under the radar as a free agent this offseason, but with Adam Fox out of the lineup, he's really stepped up big. He's been on the top power play unit and has done a nice job there. And for somebody that's known as kind of an offensive defenseman, and I understand why, very good defensively too. He's been making plays in his own end. And honestly, I would say at $825K, the steal of free agency thus far is Erik Gustafsson. But yeah, man, I figure we'll keep everything rolling here. I definitely want to shift our attention to the power play units because it's currently the number 1 and number 2 units in the league, the Devils and Rangers respectively right now. So we'll get to that in a second. First, though, Trey, would you like to let everybody know about Game Time?
Yeah, so do you want to see the Rangers and Devils play live, up close and personal? Well, you need to download the Game Time app. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets for your next big event because with the Game Time app, the reason I love it so much is that there's last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Views from all seats in the venue, lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. So once again, you can see the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices show your total upfront, so you're getting a great deal without the hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. So don't hesitate. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, and Trey and I would just like to thank everybody for making Locked On Rangers and Locked On Devils your first listens every day. Both shows are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And, Trey, we talked about this for a second off air, but both these teams are absolutely lethal on the power play. Right now, the Devils currently the best in the league at 37.9%. Rangers are actually tied for second at 33.3%. But, I guess part of the not really surprised because, again, both teams are loaded and both teams have guys that can put the puck in the net. But the Devils, we talked about their injuries, missing some guys, and they're still absolutely deadly when they have the man advantage. So what are you seeing from that unit, and what is it that makes them, so special?
Well, let's talk about pre-injuries because the top power play unit for the Devils was definitely really scary. So when we look at someone like Jack Hughes, when he's running and gunning and dealing with the puck alongside with Jesper Bratt, who can do similar things in that sort of aspect, it's like, who do you shift your attention to? Do you shift your attention to Jack Hughes or Jesper Bratt? Because like I said, both of them have speed to burn. Both of them know how to set up their respective teammates. And then before Nico Hischier went down with an injury, he was obviously on the top power play unit. But now, since he's been sidelined for a few weeks, Timo Meier stepped up into that position. And we'll talk about Timo Meier momentarily. But Timo Meier can hang in front of the net. He could be a bully down there. He's a power forward. And then for Tyler Toffoli, he knows how to hang around in the slot because he's been getting a lot of his goal attempts via just creating good looks for himself in the slot. And I think the biggest catalyst for the Devils is Jack Hughes' little brother, Luke, because Luke has been a phenomenal catalyst on the man advantage for the Devils, because I know a lot of people just look at Luke as a rookie and they're just like, how can he be a big help on the power play? Because quite honestly, I had my doubts of putting him on the top power play unit. I knew he was going to get power play reps. So I was like, the top power play unit, most likely that might be Dougie Hamilton. But Luke Hughes, similar to his brother, he's been a phenomenal playmaker. And we saw it in the previous matchup, albeit they weren't power play assists, but we saw Luke Hughes rack up 2 assists in the last game against the Penguins. So the one thing why Luke is still racking up the points despite not getting the amount of goals I'm sure he would like to have is that he's being very unselfish and he knows how to set up his teammates. So something I've been bringing up on my show religiously is like, when the Devils are fully healthy and they're on the man advantage, how do you really stop it? Because let's factor in Nico Hischier. Let's put him back, and then you move Timo Meier down to like the second power play unit. It's just like Nico Hischier is a Selke caliber player. In fact, he was a finalist just this past season. He knows how to play two-way, so that could be very effective on the power play. Tyler Toffoli hangs around in the slot. He has great chemistry with Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes, despite not being as fast as them. Because he's a veteran player, he knows how to use his head. He knows how to use his mind. He knows where to go and where the puck might locate itself. So that's one thing that Tyler Toffoli has been doing. Despite not having the speed, he makes up for it in just the overall smarts category. And then for Luke Hughes, he's just setting up his teammates. So when fully healthy, this power play unit for the Devils is actually really scary. And I said it in my bold predictions episode before heading into the season. I said, yes, the Devils were a mediocre power play team last year. But I said, going into this year, with the additions they made and with players like Timo Meier getting more adjusted to the system, I said there is no way why the Devils cannot be a top 5 power play unit. I said that. Originally, I was trying to play it safe. I was trying to be conservative and say top 10 power play team. But I said, nah, I'm going to say top 5. I'm going to take it a step further. So I'm glad that the Devils are proving me right. Now, the thing is like they're getting Jack Hughes back. That's great. But the one player I want to highlight is Timo Meier. He's really stepped up in the absence of Jack Hughes because he was on a 3-game goal streak prior to his injury, and two of his 3 goals came at the hands of the power play. So once again, I know people are saying that the Devils are a one-trick pony. They rely too much on their power play goals, but they're playing to their strengths, and that's what I like. Now, they got to work on some other aspects because you definitely don't want to be a one-trick pony, especially come playoff time. But I've been very impressed with how the Devils just know how to just utilize everyone. And they just have so many weapons up and down their lineup on the power play. It's crazy, which is why every time they don't score, every time they're buzzing around the net and they come up empty on the power play, I'm just like, I'm stunned. So I think Travis Green, or as I like to call it, the greenhouse effect, he's been a phenomenal coach, a phenomenal leader on the power play. Going into the season, Amanda Stein, the team reporter, was saying that the one thing that Travis Green knows how to do with the power play, he knows how to coach them fast. And I think that's what was missing last year for the Devils, because they knew how to play fast 5-on-5, but come power play, when you have to slow it down a little bit, that's when they were a deer in headlights. But let's shift over to the Rangers, because one of the reasons why the Rangers jumped out to an early 2-0 series lead back in the Stanley Cup playoffs a while back ago is because they were killing the Devils on the power play. Chris Kreider, as I like to call him, was a Devils killer. So every time the Rangers went on the power play, seems like Chris Kreider was at the helm of it. So what's been making the Rangers so successful on the power play?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of everything. And it's funny, Trey, I just want to mention something that you talked about a second ago there about the prediction that the Devils would be a top 5 power play team. I said the exact same thing about the Rangers heading into the season. So here we are, 1-2 in the league thus far. But as far as the Ranger power play unit, yeah, it's kind of a lot of what you said about the Devils. I think they got a group of players that really tend to complement each other very well. And the funny thing is, the Rangers are at 33.3% right now, and Mika Zibanejad hasn't really gotten it going yet. 5v5, him and Kreider haven't been at their best, but Kreider's been deadly, at least on the power play. But Mika Zibanejad thus far has only 1 power play goal, but you figure it's only a matter of time. He's been a little bit off when it comes to his one-timer, and he can shoot the one-timer with the best of them in this entire league. So once he, starts being a little more accurate with that, you got to figure the goals are going to start to come for him. Kreider, of course, just a nasty net front presence. He kind of sets up shop in the crease, and if he doesn't want to be moved, he's a big guy, very strong. There's not really a whole lot the opposition can do about it. and he's just absolutely ridiculous when it comes to his deflections. I mean, I don't think there's a player in hockey that does it better. Somebody will be shooting the puck, or they'll pass it in deep to him, and he'll just kind of make the puck go wherever he wants it to go. He is absolutely just nasty when it comes to the deflections. Then you've got Panarin. He can pretty much do everything, and obviously very good at, squeezing passes through some pretty tight windows. And something that I love, and this isn't just the power play, but he's doing on the power play too, is Panarin is shooting the puck a lot more often this season. And he's such a selfless team first guy. And obviously, very good passer, wants to be able to take advantage of that skill, but he's also got a nasty shot. I've been saying, I'll bring this up on my show every now and then, a couple of years ago, Game 7, overtime against the Penguins. I'm glad Panarin got a little bit selfish there and decided to shoot the puck when they were on the power play, because who knows what happens if he doesn't take that shot and score there. But yeah, man, I mean, just really complimentary hockey. Vincent Trocheck's very good in the bumper role. And, Adam Fox is usually a great quarterback, and they've had Erik Gustafsson step into that role and fit pretty seamlessly. Nobody's Adam Fox, but, Gustafsson is making his absence hurt, at least a little bit less than it otherwise may have.
Yeah, so I just think like the Rangers and Devils, they just know how to play to their strengths in terms of the power play. And if I'm the Devils, you don't want to go on the penalty kill, because
right.
Their penalty kill was actually pretty good against the Penguins. In fact, they got a shorthanded goal as a result of it, thanks to Curtis Lazar and a great setup by Michael McLeod and Eric Haula. But you probably don't want to play with fire in this case. So once again, that win against the Penguins was a big momentum shift for them, because they were on a 3-game losing streak, and hopefully they can carry some of that momentum into the next game against the Rangers. And I think the Rock is going to be bumping, because this is the first time that the Devils are playing the Rangers, at least when the games count for real, since the Stanley Cup playoffs. I was talking to Johnny Lazarus once again a few months back, and I said, is there still bad blood between these two teams? He said, there's always going to be bad blood. It's going to be who's the big brother, who's the little brother, whose team is better, who has the more recent Stanley Cups, yada, yada, yada. Is Kakko going to be better than Hughes someday? We're never going to stop hearing those discussions, right, or things like that. But my thing is, like, I'm actually really excited to see like what this is going to be a good test for the Devils, because once again, even if they get Jack Hughes back, they're still going to be shorthanded, because they're going to be missing Nico Hischier, their captain, and they're most likely going to be missing Timo Meier, who's a big power forward who can definitely be somewhat of a menace towards the Rangers, because we saw him get underneath the skin of Shesterkin a few times. Then he had to pay the piper thanks to Jacob Trouba, but still, nonetheless, it's going to be an ongoing battle, and I'm looking forward to it. And I saw a little bit in the preseason, both teams were playing very physical with one another.
Yeah, it's a rivalry that's really reignited. And it's been fun, doing all these crossovers with you along the way here, Trey, because even going back like 3 years, one of our first crossover episodes, we could both kind of see that our teams were, they weren't there yet, but they were putting the pieces together and moving in the right direction. And it just felt like, even back then, the intensity was there. The energy was there. Obviously, we got both fan bases going back and forth on social media. That's basically just par for the course, but it's been a fun ride, and both teams seem to be set up for the short term and the long term. So it's going to be a lot of fun going forward and just watching these teams battle. We'll keep everything rolling in just a second here. We got to get to some predictions, maybe some under the radar players to watch as well. First, though, we definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On Rangers and Locked On Devils is brought to you by our sponsor, Jace Medical. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm thankful for that connection that we have. And today, I want our chat to be a little more personal. Whether you're on extended travel, bracing for a major weather event, or limited by yet another supply shortage, you are covered, my friend. Thanks to our partners at Jace Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics for Cialis, Viagra, Revaccio prescriptions. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. So if you or someone you love would get some peace of mind having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. remember to use the promo code Locked On for $20 off of your purchase. All right, and so we'll go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On Rangers and Locked On Devils. And once again, we thank you for making both shows your first listens every day, and both are free and available on all platforms. So, Trey, you touched on Tyler Toffoli a little while ago, but he's somebody that I really wanted to ask you about. We've talked about how both teams are dealing with injuries. They need players to step up. And Tyler Toffoli, I mean, what a job he's done so far for this team. He goes from Calgary to New Jersey in exchange for Igor Shesterkin and a third-round pick. And 15 points in 15 games to start the season. What are you seeing from Toffoli, and how well has he fit in with his new team here?
Once again, a lot of people are concerned about his skating ability because the Devils like to play a fast-paced type of game. But the one thing that Toffoli can rely on is that he's been in this league for a good while. So he's just a very smart, dynamic player. And he has great chemistry with Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes. It's one of the reasons why they've all seen great success early on. So Jesper Bratt, he hit a bit of a slump, but I hope he broke out of it now because he scored in the previous matchup against the Penguins. But I think for Toffoli, it's just like his veteran leadership, him hanging around in the slot and just creating those good looks for himself and his teammates. I think he's been a very big asset for the Devils. Obviously, Tom Fitzgerald is trying to work with his camp to try to get an extension. But like you said, the Devils traded away Igor Shesterkin for his services. And I think that was a big win for Tom Fitzgerald. And now, but obviously, Toffoli has been a big asset for the Devils. But I want to give credit where credit is rightfully deserved, because once again, Timo Meier has also stepped up in the absence of Jack Hughes. John Marino has put up a lot more point production compared to last year. And also Andre Palat. Don't look now, Devils fans, but Andre Palat now has 3 assists in his previous 4 games. I know people like to ridicule Andre Palat for his big contract. Yes, he's overpaid, and he's a overpaid bottom 6 player, but yet he's still the alternate captain of the team. I think Palat has actually done somewhat decent the last few games for the Devils. Same with Dawson Mercer. Yes, Dawson Mercer hasn't been perfect, and I expect a little bit more scoring from him, but it seems like he's starting to get his act together a little bit. So I think the point I'm just trying to make, John, is just like the one thing that I need to see from the Devils is that I need to see their depth players step up a little bit more, because I think the Devils have been very top heavy to open up the season. And I, like I said in the previous segment, it was sort of an awake for a lot of Devils players in the previous matchup against the Penguins, because I think we saw a lot of players step up their games, players that aren't really highlighted all that often. So players like Nathan Bastian, players like Curtis Lazar, players like Colin Miller. So they really stepped up their game big time, and all hands are going to be needed in this game against the Rangers. It's going to be another big test, because one of the hottest teams in the NHL for right now. And I think Lindy Ruff, he might have to take the risk again, go 11-7 line combination, despite getting Jack Hughes back. We'll see what happens. And I think Vitek Vanacek will be in net. I know Devils fans probably want to see Akira Schmid because of what Akira Schmid did to the Rangers in the playoffs. But the fact of the matter is that Vitek Vanacek has been the better goalie. And if the Devils need a win, I'm putting more of my trust in Vitek Vanacek for the time being. And I think if the Devils just once again get back to what they did now that Jack Hughes is maybe projected to return, then I think it's actually going to be a competitive game. And I think the more casual hockey fan will be very entertained by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I was going to ask you about the goalie situation. So you're good with Vanacek. He's kind of your guy. He's the guy that you think should be getting the bulk of starts. He's gotten, I believe, what is he at to? Like 11 starts now. And Schmidt, I think, has about 6. So is that about a good ratio as far as you're concerned? Is that about right?
Well, I'm going to have to be satisfied with it, because the Devils don't really have much options.
Yeah.
And that's been a concern for them, because Mackenzie Blackwood was dealt away during the offseason to the San Jose Sharks. And Vitek Vanacek, he's appeared in 11 games. He has a goals against average of 3.3 and a save percentage of 889. And then for Akira Schmid, he has a goals against average of 3.46 and a save percentage of 885. So when you say, am I satisfied with it? I really have no choice but to be satisfied with it, because who else are the Devils going to turn to? They can only turn to options in the AHL, because I think Nico Dawes is still injured. Erik Källgren, he's right now in Utica. Keith Kincaid, he's right now playing in Chicago. He's with the Chicago Wolves, the independent AHL team. So it's just like I don't really have any other option. And it hasn't been their fault. The defense in front of them hasn't been all that great either, because the defense for the Devils focuses more on offense. And former Devil Ryan Graves said that going into the matchup, that the one thing you need to do for the Devils is that you need to force them to play defense, because they don't really have that big assertive defenseman. I disagree with them in some aspects. John Marino, Kevin Ball, Jonas Siegenthaler, I think, are big defensemen who definitely focus more on the defensive side of things. But he is right in a sense, which is if you just force the Devils to defend and get them into a lot of odd man rush situations, which is bound to happen, then you can leave them very vulnerable. So the defense in front of Schmid and Vanecek hasn't been the greatest, and I think the Devils are still going through some growing pains with the subtractions of Damon Severson and Ryan Graves. But I think they're going to get better. But for right now, if I need a win, which I'm sure the Devils would like to win against their arch rival, I need to go with Vitek Vanecek and not get hung up of what happened in the playoffs.
Fair enough. And, you've been talking about, the Devils needing a little bit more depth. Is there anybody that's kind of like an under-the-radar player for this game that you think could end up having a strong performance for the Devils and maybe tip the scales in their favor? Like anybody that's just kind of a dark horse as far as somebody who could step up big in this game for the Devils?
Keep an eye on Curtis Lazar. He has scored 3 times in his last 6, and he's been very physical for the Devils. Like I remember speaking to him a few months back when the Devils first acquired him, and I asked him, like, how would you describe your game? He said, meat and potatoes type of hockey. That's what he said verbatimly. So don't expect anything too flashy. But I think Curtis Lazar has been a big add for the Devils on the bottom 6. Hasn't been perfect, but he's still trying to get a little bit more adjusted to it. But I want to flip the question back into your end. When we look at the Rangers, when we look at this like beer league hockey team, like Johnny Lazarus described it to me, because the Rangers just signed a bunch of old players that are going to come at a cheap penny. How do you think they've been faring? Because one of the things that I think was a concern for the Rangers was, could they still play fast despite adding players like Bonino or Wheeler to the roster? It hasn't been the easiest. We saw what happened with Tarasenko and Kane last year. But do you think this Rangers team can still maintain this first position? And also, where do you see them going?
Yeah, I think they can. I mean, it's going to be tough to go an entire season leading your division from coast to coast, which is basically what they would be doing. That will be difficult, but I think they have it in them. As far as like the older players, like I know a lot of not even just Ranger fans, but just general hockey fans. You're kind of surveying everything that all these teams have done through free agency and trades. And a lot of people got hung up because the Rangers now going into the season, I think they were like 10th, 11th, 12th oldest team in hockey, somewhere in that ballpark. But, I made the point that the core, the players that really matter, the guys that are going to be, the star players, they're all, early 30s at their oldest. Even Chris Kreider, who's been around forever, he's still only 32. Panarin's like 30 or 31. Mika just turned 30. And then obviously you got the really young guys like Lafreniere, Kakko, Chytil, they're all still in their early 20s. But, the reason why the average age went up is because they brought in some older players, but they brought those guys in just to be role players. Jonathan Quick is here to be the backup goalie. Nick Bonino's here to be the fourth line center. Blake Wheeler's here to give your team a little bit more scoring depth, hopefully. He got off to a really slow start, did Blake Wheeler, and watching him skate, like clearly you can tell. If you're watching hockey for the first time, you can tell this guy's a veteran player and doesn't have the wheels, no pun intended, that he used to have. But overall, I think these additions have really fit in nicely for the Rangers. And as far as playing for Peter Laviolette is concerned, I think myself, other Ranger fans, maybe the one concern that we had was that, obviously he's a coach that focuses on defense, but you don't want your star players to be handcuffed either. And I think there's been a nice balance here where they are a better defensively structured team than they were last year. But by that same token, he still lets Panarin be Panarin. He still lets somebody like Chris Kreider be Chris Kreider. Mika Zibanejad be Mika Zibanejad. And if you don't do that, you're doing a disservice to your team. So they've really just kind of, in the early goings here, struck the right balance between, yes, being defensively responsible, but still playing with some pretty good speed and, taking advantage of the offensive abilities that a lot of these players have.
All right. So I guess to wrap up today's episode, let's talk predictions, which isn't really my forte, but still, I've been right a few times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, hey, you know what? We've both been doing this a while, Trey. We throw out enough predictions. Eventually, you and me will both hit on a couple of them. So there's that.
I was right about Devils no, I said Devils in 6. I said
You
Devils.
said Devils in 6. I said Rangers in 7. So if they would have won Game 7, I could have stood up and take a bow, but obviously that didn't happen.
Shoulda,
But
woulda.
anyway, as for this game, again, both teams dealing with a couple injuries. We're not 100% sure about certain players playing or not. Makes it a little bit tougher to predict. But what do you got, Trey? Do you want to throw out like a final score or somebody to score a goal? Anything crazy to happen?
I think Jack Hughes is going to get the rock bumping once again. He's going to make his triumphant return. That's my first prediction. I think Jack Hughes is going to make his long-awaited return after missing 5 games. So I'm excited to see that. I think Jack Hughes is also going to score and rack up an assist. I think he's going to walk away with 2 points, so that way he can put the NHL world on notice once again why he was the NHL's first star in October and why he should be the early front runner for the Hart Trophy. His Hart Trophy campaign is still alive. So yeah, that's going to be part of my prediction. I think the Devils are going to come away with another upset victory because I think that win against the Penguins did wonders for them. And this is going to be the pinnacle moment where their season gets turned around a little bit because they've been playing somewhat decent to open up the season, hit a bit of a rough patch due to injury. But I'd say they're going to come away with a 3-2 victory. It's going to be very exciting to see. And I think a lot of people are going to once again see why the Devils are still a top-notch team in the Metropolitan Division.
Fair enough. I'm going to go 4-3 Rangers. I do think it'll be a competitive game. It tends to be whenever these two teams meet each other. And I kind of a random thing I want to throw out there. It kind of just came to me just a second ago. But I'm going to say Jimmy Vesey scores a goal in this game. The playoff series last year, there were a couple of games where the Rangers just did not have it, and the Devils basically skated circles around them. Jimmy Vesey is one of those guys that goes out there and just busts it every single night. I know he spent a season with the Devils before he came back to the Rangers, but yeah, I don't know, just kind of a hunch. Give me Jimmy Vesey to score a goal. I'll say the Rangers win this one 4-3. And as far as the game-winning goal, Alexis Lafreniere has been hot lately. He's playing the best hockey that he's played since coming to the NHL, so I'll go with Panarin to Lafreniere in the third period with like about 5 minutes left. Go with that, and that's your game winner, 4-3 Rangers.
All right. Sounds good, John. So we'll see what happens. And it's always a great rivalry when these two teams play. They don't like each other, and saw it during the preseason, but now the games count for real once again.
Yeah, and be kind to each other on social media. We know that emotions run high and everything here, but let's at least keep the gloves up between Ranger fans and Devil fans here.
At the end of the day, guys, it's a game that will not affect your life in more ways than one. Unless you're betting your life on it, then it's not going to affect your life in more ways than one. It's sports, not life.
Exactly. So yeah, Ranger fans, Devil fans, thank you guys as always for tuning in. We'll see you next time.